It's 4 p.m. We're bringing you developing news.
And the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez.
I'm at Lingao. Here are some stories we're watching this Wednesday, midweek, July 3. The Philippines and China have agreed to de-escalate tensions in the West Philippine Sea. The DFA says, parang iba ata yung video natin. DFA says, Beijing and Manila have agreed to restore trust amid recent incidents in disputed waters. But while there is progress in developing measures to manage the situation, the DFA says, and we quote, significant differences remain. Meantime, China's so-called monster ship has been spotted again in the West Philippine Sea. Maritime security expert Ray Powell says the vessel was sighted off Ayungin Shoal this morning. He adds that China Coast Guard vessel 5203 was also in Ayungin with the monster ship.
And House Speaker Martin Romualdez is reportedly in favor of strict regulation over the total ban of pogos. In an ambush interview aired in a radio station, Romualdez said the ban should only be imposed on illegal pogos. He believes the total ban would only drive pogos underground. Joining us today, Ana Marie Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star and Storycon's resident political pundit, Ronald Llamas.
Hi, happy Wednesday.
Parang iba forma ni Tito Ronald ngayon, no? Tito Ronald, ikaw ba nasa Pilipinas na o nasa US pa?
Alas 4 ng madaling araw
US pa, pupuntang airport.
Parang
Pupuntang airport pagkatapos ng Storycon.
Yan, okay. 4 a.m., no? Ronald, 4 a.m. There in,
4 a.m. 4 a.m.
Okay.
Bok, napansin mo yun, no? Yung last headline natin?
Pauwi na siya.
Ano yun?
Romualdez wants to ban illegal pogos.
Alam na nila yun. Alam na ng mga tao yun.
Talaga? Talaga? Sinabi niya?
Total ban daw, hindi total ban.
Maybe it's the way it was written lang.
Yun.
Maybe it's the way it was written. Hindi kahapon, hindi problema kagabi. Ay, also doon sa kagabi some of the newscasts, you have to be careful with this. Kagabi, the story that was read out loud was President Marcos approves the proposed 6.53 trillion peso budget. Hindi pa approve.
Yun. Okay.
Yung National Expenditure
NEP,
Program.
inapprove lang ng Pangulo ang submission ng NEP to Congress. Pero
Yun ang in-approve niya, yung
pero
proposal.
the lead stories were inaprubahan ng Pangulo ang panukalang 6.53 trillion peso budget para sa 2025.
So what's the right thing to say?
Inapruba ng Pangulo ang pag-submit sa Kongreso ng
National
May
Expenditure
kulang,
Program.
for submission. May kulang lang. Mahaba kasi sa headline, ikaw naman, Ed.
Kung ikaw nakikinig ka sa balita, parang, talaga, aprobado na. Diba? Ibang malaking kabahan yun.
Right.
Approve yung submission to Congress.
Submission for approval.
Or can it be said National Expenditure Program?
Mas hindi maintindihan yun eh. Not in the
Oo
headline.
nga, haba-haba nun.
Proseso
budget
kasi.
na lang.
Iba proseso. Pero ang alam ko dyan, pag nasa kamay pa ng executive branch yan, National Expenditure Program.
NEP talaga.
Ito siguro makakatulong sa atin, maliwanagan niya. Kasi bahagi ito dati ng executive branch, di ba? So tama ba yun, Ronald? Na pag nasa side ng executive branch, they call it National Expenditure Program.
Hindi ko kabisado yan, Patrick. Wala akong pakialam sa budget.
Hindi kasi politika.
Mat yan mat.
Doon ka palagi sa operations.
Kaya ako nag-journalism para makaiwas sa math.
Ayun, yun lang.
Pero ito yun, it's the NEP that is submitted by Malacanang to Congress. The NEP is basically the compilation of the submissions from the departments.
From all the departments, all branches of government.
Tama yun.
Binuo ng
Tama
DBM.
Budget proposal siya.
Budget proposal.
Tama
Binuo ng
yun.
DBM, inaproba ng Pangulo for submission to Congress.
Right.
For approval of Congress,
Yes.
for signature of Malacanang eventually.
At saka ang Congress,
Alam ko yun.
at saka ang Congress, I think, tama ba to, Ami, no? Nag-cover tayo ng Senate, pero I don't know how much they've changed the rules. Ano? Ang alam ko lang, pwede bawasan, hindi pwede dagdagan. Right? Pero nagkakaroon ng insertions. Parang gano'n, tama ba ako?
General rule.
As a general rule.
General rule in the Constitution says that.
Pwedeng bawasan, hindi pwede dagdagan ng mga congressman.
Yung piling
Parang hindi
dagdagan.
nasusunod yung general rule na yan.
Oh, yun. Kasi may insertions. Kung tumawag.
Pero nasa Constitution yun, ha? I remember that. Nasa Constitution. Uh, um, Congress cannot add to what was proposed by Malacanang.
Pwede siyang i-challenge kung meron, kung sakasakali, constitutional issue eh. Pwede siyang i-challenge sa Supreme
Sa
Court
Korte
actually.
Suprema.
Okay. And I remember
Yeah.
from my days covering the Senate, I think, I wonder, wait, was it Joker Arroyo or Juan Ponce Enrile who'd always point out that the single biggest piece of legislation that senators and congressmen really have to work on is the national budget.
Yes.
Kaya itong dalawa
Kasi napakahirap nga daw intindihin eh.
Yun, kaya
Saka
to-
napaka kailangan minute scrutiny, di ba?
Right. At
Di ba
kaya,
talagang kailangan tignan mo mabuti.
at kaya itong
Kaya
dalawang
nga
senador
nung nasa
nito,
Senate si Senator Ping Lacson, siya yung magaling magposisi niya.
Right.
May mga double, quadruple, even quintuple na reporting
yun.
sa budget.
At saka Ronald Ami, no? Kaya itong dalawang senador nito, si Senator Joker Arroyo at Senator Juan Ponce, hindi mahilig, hindi nila sinusukat yung galing nila o yung trabaho nila sa Senado sa dami ng mga bills na pinapasa o sinasubmit. Pero kung gaano sila kabusisi dun sa national budget. Because really, it is, because that's government functioning and delivering services. It's all about that.
But if it's the biggest piece of legislation by senators and congressmen, can you imagine how many congressmen lang, for example, really pay attention to the budget hearings? Out of 300 right now, 312, how many congressmen really pay attention or attend the budget hearings? Usually,
Kaya nga,
ilan lang yan eh.
Kaya nga, Ed, sino ngayon ang senador na gumagawa ng function ni Enrile, ni Ping Lacson, at saka ni Joker Arroyo? Ngayon, sinong gumagawa
Eh,
niya?
di si-
Dahil walang
Si Robin Padilla.
Talaga.
Si Robin Padilla.
To their point, Ronald, no? To their point,
May statement ngayon, may statement si President Marcos na related to the budget. Hindi ko mapagtugma eh. Sabi niya, yung part daw ng budget na yon, yung measures to continue easing price increases daw. Hindi ko alam kung saan dun sa
Which
budget
part?
na yun. Siguro
Right, which
kailangan
part of it?
basahin natin yun.
Well,
Yan ang statement niya about that
well,
budget.
yun ang kailangang paliwanag
Nasa,
ng
nasa
DBM.
committee
I
niya
think.
on constitutional amendments.
Okay. Pero in fairness, I think that's where the gap happens. I think that's where, let's say, for example, the DBM needs to explain how this budget will help ease prices, ease inflation.
Inflation.
Oo. I mean, I'm sure there's a rational explanation. That's not being heard or said. Ganon.
Dati mahilig
Eh,
magpaliwanag
siguro-
sa amin yan si Ben Jokno eh.
Oo.
Undersecretary pa si Ben
Oo.
Jokno sa DBM. Panahon ni Cory. Papasala namin yan, makipagkwentuhan, ganyan.
Well, one example I can imagine, Ronald, Ami, is that, for example, how does this budget help keep inflation down? Maybe dun sa support services na popondohan in agri, for example.
Sa agriculture, siguro, pwede.
Let's see.
Support
Pero
services
we need
for
to hear.
farm support services, pwede.
Right. We
Saka
need,
baka nandyan na yung matagal nang pinapangakong cold chain facilities.
yun, mga bagay-bagay na
Tagal
ganyan,
na niya.
Ami. Tama. Oo.
Hinihintay. Diba?
Meron
pwede.
naman lumalabas. May lumalabas na ba ng mga lump sums dyan? Yung mga nakatagong mga pork.
Yan, bawal yan.
Yun ang hahanapin.
Oo. Dahil dati
Bawal
Ping
na yun
Lacson
eh, di ba?
naglalabas nila eh. Oo.
Bawal na yung lump sum appropriations, pero
definitely.
they keep finding a way. They keep finding a way na
Nakatago.
magkaroon ng ganun pa rin proseso.
Nakatago yun.
Pati nga
I
yung
do
mga
remember,
confidential fund, lumaki ng lumaki, di ba? Hindi natin alam.
I also remember, was it last year na, di ba, bawal magdagdag dapat ang Kongreso doon sa NEP, pero pagdating sa BICAM, doon pa nagdadagdag.
Yes, yun na nga.
Yung BICAM is supposed to
Naging issue din yan.
reconcile. The BICAM is supposed to
Oh,
reconcile
yan
the
na nga.
versus the two chambers. It's not its own Congress. Where they can
Hindi
actually
pwede. Di ba,
gusto nyo
unresolved
imbitahin?
yata yung question na yan, ano?
Oo.
Unresolved yung question na yan.
Nakalimutan na lang. Until
Yes.
the
Baka
next
pwede nyo
budget
imbitahin
season.
si Shelo Magno para
Oh, yeah.
i-deconstruct.
Yeah.
I-deconstruct
That'd
yung
be
budget na yan. Ano, doon siya galing eh. Undersecretary of Finance.
interesting.
Nakikita niya yung mga nakatago na yan.
Di ba? Unresolved issue. Yeah, we should bring it in, especially when the budget season starts. And we usually,
Oo nga.
usually it starts after SONA. Yung
Padali
focus
kasi
submission.
mahirap din explain kasi sa tao kung sakali, ano. Hindi siya, it's not a sexy topic kasi for politicians eh. Kaya hindi siya masyadong,
kasi naman, Ami,
hindi siya masyadong napag-uusapan.
you're talking
At
about 6
mahirap explain
trillion.
sa taong bayan eh.
You're talking about 6 trillion kung saan ang minimum wage is
Yeah.
nasa 600.
Yun, pwedeng ganunin na, dito, this is where your taxes go. Siguro
6
ganon.
trillion versus 600. Medyo mahirap ang ano.
10% increase in this year's budget.
10%, but I don't know. I didn't see the details.
That's another thing we should know, no? What if that's a normal increase in the budget that's covered by?
You're supposed to look at the trends in the increase and where
Yes.
where the add-ons are.
Does that only cover inflation, for example, which was how many percent last year, and or are there new expenditures coming in this year? Na may big ticket
And
expenditures.
then for the longest time, the biggest chunk of the budget went to debt appropriations. I don't know if that's still the case. Automatic
Debt
debt
service.
Panong pata ni Korean
Oh,
Bob.
but
Debt
it's all
service,
automated, di ba? Hanggang ngayon ba, Ronald? Di ba? That's
Debt
automated.
service.
Hanggang ngayon
Yeah.
naman eh.
Yeah.
Hanggang
Hanggang
ngayon,
ngayon.
yung pinakamalaki.
Oh,
Hanggang ngayon.
Although nakalagay sa Constitution, dapat education ang
Education.
yeah.
pero hindi rin nasusunod yung Constitution doon. Debt servicing yung pinakamalaki.
Hanggang ngayon?
Ilan ba Ed yung deficit ngayon?
No, hindi ko alam kung mathematics.
Between yung budget at saka yung
Pag-google
earnings natin,
Change,
yung revenues.
change topic na nga. Palalim ng palalim eh.
Let's talk about politics.
Balik tayo ng
Isa sa kailangan
West
tingnan
Philippine
yun
Sea.
Gano'ng kalaki yung deficit.
Balik sa politics,
And the budget.
Nangangarito tayo sa usapan natin.
Oy, dahil tanongin natin, Ami, ano na sa front page ng Philippine Star?
It's a slow day, Pwera yung mga usapan sa budget, mga follow-up dun sa meeting yung between the Philippines and China. Finally, actually, meron pang mas interesting yung Monday, yung meeting ng which we touched on actually yesterday with the PAOK Undersecretary Gilbert Cruz. Ang balita namin, ang nag-request ng meeting na yon with PAOK and with Lucas Bersamin was the Chinese embassy because of the death of several Chinese nationals na nadagdagan pa nung kailan lang na last month na may napatay na Chinese and a Chinese American. Kaya daw pati USFBI ngayon nakikisali sa pag-iimbestiga, sa pagtulong, sa pag-imbestiga dahil it involves a Chinese American. Pinatay daw, although we're not sure kung ang mga suspect pogo. Pero hanggang ngayon hindi pa alam eh. Yun daw ang pinunta actually ni Chinese ambassador sa Malacanang, kaya PAOK ang kausap niya actually. It was not the one with the DFA. This is different. Yung punta niya sa Malacanang, yun ang hinihingi niya na aksyonan niyo naman to kasi marami ng Chinese na napapatay dito sa Pilipinas.
Okay.
And
Ronald,
several of them were linked to pogos.
If-
Yun ang
Ami, Ronald, if we look at recent developments, it seems like diplomacy is kicking in. At least two incidents this week, 2 days ago. Finally, nakita yung bilateral consultation mechanism.
Yes.
It kicked in.
Yan, nakaschedule yan.
And
Nakaschedule yan.
second is itong meeting in Malacanang with Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin and the Chinese Ambassador Shilin. I'll add another incident is yung of course there's two ways to look at it, but this incident involving a fire in a Filipino fishing boat. Okay. Of course, Commodore Tariela is saying na hinarangan, pero there's another way of looking at it. I think from the Philippine Coast Guard, the spokesman si Balilo, Commodore Balilo is saying na initially hinarang, pero pinayagan rin yung Philippine Navy na tumulong. So, half
Yes.
glass, half full, half empty.
Pero,
But if you look at the chain of events, the recent developments, diplomacy seems to be kicking in, Ronald.
tama.
At least nag-uusap.
Mukhang yung pinag-uusapan natin more than a week ago ay nagsisimula na yung de-escalation. Sana magtuloy-tuloy yan. Dahil wala naman tayo masyadong i-de-escalate eh. Dahil yung ginagawa lang natin ay magbigay ng supply. So, mas malaking bahagi ng de-escalation ay kailangan manggaling sa China. Pero kailangan ayusin ng ating gobyerno yung magkaibang messaging. Halimbawa sa Coast Guard, nag-aaway. Mismo yung mga spokespersons ng Coast Guard, no? 'Di ba? Hindi maganda tignan eh. Hindi maganda tignan dahil very public yung away eh. Hindi lang siya interpretation nung nangyari. Mukhang merong dynamics eh. Di ba? Kay Tariela at saka kay Balilo.
Oo. Ronald, I'll present to you another counter narrative on that. Kasi kanina ka-chat ko yung mga kasama natin, mga anchor sa The Big Story eh. Isn't this also, could it be another way of looking at this is government, okay? Playing different hands. Sabi nga nila, no? Dito sa China issue nito, that a country that is in a weaker position should have many options out there, should have many trial balloons out there, should be playing as many cards as possible.
Maganda yun. Okay yun, Patrick, kung by design. Ibig sabihin, dinisenyo mo na gano'n.
Right.
Mahirap kung kayo mismo nako-confuse eh.
Kung by mistake.
yun yung mahirap. Kung yan ay disenyo in terms of tactics, di ba? Ay baka okay siya. Pero for now, sa aking vantage point, hindi ko siya nakikita as a design. No?
Kasi ito lang, Ronald, ito lang, Ronald, in one corridor discussion or conversation with a top security official, he did say na, for example, na in the case of Commodore Tariela, no, sabihin na natin, ang pagkakasabi ng itong official nito, sabi niya, there is some use for Commodore Tariela. Okay. So parang may play na ganon, at least from the security officials. And he did also say that not to worry because there are adults in the room. It was his way of assuring us na while the saber rattling may be unnerving to some, but there are adults in the room. And that there are some use for this, kumbaga classic carrot and stick, I guess, Ronald. Ano?
Sino ba yung adult in the room?
Ayun.
Paano kaya ang
sila
description nila kay Gilbert Chodoro? Paano ang description nila doon? Adult ba yan o ano?
Parang hindi siya yung nire-refer na adult in the room. Parang lang.
Bok, let's begin.
Parang nga, Ronald.
Kasi evolving yung response natin eh. Di ba? It is an evolving response to what's happening in the South China Sea. Kaya medyo hindi pa rin malinaw eh. Siguro kahit gobyerno natin eh. Nag-iisip pa rin yan eh. Pinag-uusapan eh. So you're exploring multiple options, sabi nga ni Patrick.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pwede natin bigyan ng benefit of the doubt. Pwede natin bigyan ng benefit. At sana yung adult in the room hindi puti.
Yun.
Hindi naman siguro.
Hindi naman siguro.
Okay, let's bring our first guest for today, International Studies expert Renato De Castro. Professor De Castro, magandang hapon and welcome back to Storycon.
Afternoon, Patrick.
Professor.
Hi, sir.
Prof,
Hello,
sino ba yung
hello.
adult in the room?
Ayan. Siguro mas alam na ito.
Hindi ko alam eh. Wala akong alam eh. Wala akong alam doon eh. Kung sino yun eh. Baka si Ronald. Si Ronald may experience sa gobyerno eh. Di ba may adult in the room din doon sa mediation? Doon sa Scarborough Shoal? Alam na alam ni Ronald yun eh.
Pero Prof, pag adult ang pinag-uusapan
Kasi
tapos si Ronald
Trillanes.
ang pinag-uusapan dyan, ibang dating.
Senior citizen.
Pero Professor, what do you think of this story nga? Professor, anong tingin nyo dito sa de-escalation? Na meron na tayong parang preliminary talks na meron ng may initial agreement na to de-escalate. You think that can be sustained considering what's happening in the West Philippine Sea and what's at stake for the two countries?
Okay, we have to differentiate, no? At tinatawag nating conflict management and conflict resolution. So what's happening is conflict management because the tension has already increased.
Yes.
Of course, yung nangyari doon noong June 17, kung merong Filipino service personnel na napatay, of course, this would trigger a mutual defense treaty based on the statements of Admiral Aquilino and, of course, the position of the U.S. Indo-PACOM. So both sides realized that they had to pull back because once, of course, you have a major confrontation between the United States and China in the South China Sea, we will basically lose control. Even the Chinese would lose control. No? So it will be a dynamic that will simply go out of hand. So going back, if you're familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis, so sabi nga, you have to have fuller hands intervening. So there was an effort, of course, initially by the executive secretary to de-escalate. And of course, right now we have this bilateral consultative mechanism that is, trying its best to de-escalate the tension. But it will not resolve
Professor.
the dispute. Yes.
Professor, ano bang ibig sabihin natin ng de-escalation? Anong ibig sabihin natin ng de-escalation dito sa crisis management na nangyayari? Dahil parang ano pa yung pwede nating i-de-escalate? We are just supplying our troops sa BRP Sierra Madre. So, yung de-escalation ba ay ititigil yung pag-supply? Yung de-escalation ba ay basically rhetorics?
Hindi, kasi ang escalation na nangyari noong June 17, before, pag yung supplies dinideliver na ng mga rubber dinghy, hindi niya hinaharas ng Chinese Coast Guard. Kapag nakapasok na yung malaking supply ship, tapos dinideliver na yung mga supplies on board the rubber dinghy na minamanage ng quad, wala na. Kumbaga, cruise na yan. Pero the Chinese escalated it by intercepting the rubber dinghy. And of course, I think the game plan of the Chinese then, and this is based, of course, on the analysis of the Philippine Navy spokesperson, the Rear Admiral Roy Trinidad, the Chinese were, of course, baiting us to fire the first shot. Mm-hmm. If we have fired the first shot, then the Chinese would claim it's a self-defense, so they will basically take over yung mga rubber dinghies and possibly even board yung BRP Sierra Madre. Mm-hmm. So fortunately, yung squad that were delivering the supplies maintained their professionalism to full, and of course, our troops on board the BRP Sierra Madre did not fire. So we were able to prevent the escalation from, of course, achieving the goal of the Chinese in forcing us to fire the first shot. Kasi ito yung game plan palagi ng mga Chinese eh. Ginawa nila sa mga Indians in 1962. Hello?
Yes, Prof. Yes, Prof. You're still here.
Oh, yan.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant, Prof. Prof, that's what I meant. Di ba China ang dapat mag-de-escalate?
Oo, yan. Tama. Dapat itigil nila. We go back to the status quo. Now, once the supplies are being delivered by the rubber dinghy, then they stop the harassment.
Prof, let me just try to rephrase or tweak Ronald's question. Do we already see signs of de-escalation as a result of the BCM, or are we still waiting for that? I asked it kasi some people are saying, nagbawasan ng boats ang China dun sa area. From 120, naging 19 na lang. So, malaki-laki ron 30. Pero wouldn't the real test be when we finally send another boat to resupply? That's the real test of whether or not there is de-escalation?
Yes.
Baka naman we're already hoping de-escalated na just because nagkaroon ng meeting.
Yes, that's the case. No? Pero, of course, kung titingnan rin natin yung mga situations, no? There's a disconnect between what's happening in Beijing and, of course, in the South China Sea. Or, again, this is a case of the Chinese saying one thing and doing another thing. Mm-hmm. Ito palagi yung ino-warn sa atin ng mga Vietnamese. Balik po tayo sa visit po ni President Marcos sa Beijing. Nagkaroon ng agreement for a hotline.
Yeah.
No, in 2 instances ito na nagkaroon ng crisis, ginamit natin yung hotline. We are assuming na this will be a conflict management mechanism. The first time we used the hotline, it took the Chinese about 6 to 9 hours to answer.
Oh, what a hotline.
Cold line.
Nine hours of
Line
dial
siya.
code, sir.
Ginamit yung hotline. Sumagot sa Beijing at pinagalitan tayo bakit tayo nagrereklamo.
Okay.
And we were told, just convey your message to the Chinese embassy in Manila.
Okay. That's an interesting detail.
The main purpose ng hotline, no? And of course, what also shocked President Marcos, no, when he was in Beijing, no, supposedly he was talking with President Xi Jinping, tapos nangyari yung incident na hinarang ho ng Chinese Coast Guard yung isang Philippine Navy boat, no, na nagdadala ng debris from a Chinese rocket.
Yeah.
Without even asking them. Just give us the debris. Inak ng Chinese Coast Guard yung
I
cable
remember
na
that, sir.
nagdadala. Tapos, again,
That's near Sandy Cay, if I remember right.
We have to basically look at Chinese action rather than, of course, to simply rely on what they're saying.
Mhm. Sir, let me still be the cynic here. Doesn't it isn't it to the advantage of China to dribble us around indefinitely? I mean, escalate, de-escalate, escalate, de-escalate. Doesn't that work in their favor? Kasi in the meantime, Sierra Madre crumbles into the ocean.
Dagdag, Prop,
Yeah, of
doon sa
course,
tanong ni
but-
Ed. Prop, skeptical ka ba doon sa tinatawag nilang de-escalation? Skeptical ka ba dyan? Based sa ating
Si
karanasan.
Ronald, is familiar with what happened sa Scarborough Shoal, di ba?
Yung umatras tayo, sila hindi.
Let's put Ronald on the spot. Nag-enjoy sa Amerika, no? Right, in the Scarborough Shoal. There was supposed to be a commitment for mutual withdrawal. Ano nangyari, di ba? And everyone was blaming, of course, the Americans and, of course, the late President Benigno Aquino III. But all the time, it was the Chinese that reneged on their commitment for a mutual withdrawal. Will you agree with me, Ronald?
Definitely. Kaya nga, Prop, sinasabi ko lang na mukhang skeptical kayo dito sa de-escalation na ito because of our experiences in the past.
Of course. I think you will also share my skepticism given your experience during the term of the late President Benigno Aquino III.
Well, we're hoping na sana ay may mangyari dito. We're hoping. Pero based on past experiences, tama ka, medyo skeptical tayo.
Well,
Let's
Prof,
hope
Prof,
for the
Ronald,
best.
Prof and Ronald, what sort of
Yes.
action do we want to see from China, from the Chinese side, that will at least give more confidence, for example, on de-escalation? What sort of response or action do we expect to see? Do we want to see?
Ayun nga yung sinasabi ni Ronald, minsan kailangan mo yung adult in the room. In a form probably of an American carrier battle group watching over the resupply.
Pero Prof, what about
Sir,
siguro
magkakaroon sa Sardinas, may battle group na
mate-testing natin, pwede nating testingin in the next, ano bang tawag natin doon, yung mga expedition ng mga fishermen natin to within our EEC. Siguro
Civilian
doon
convoy.
mate-testing kasi at this point, ang report natin from our authorities, nababawasan daw ngayon yung patrol vessels ng China in the West Philippine Sea. Yun yung pinaka-latest. So, tignan natin kung tatagal yan. Saka kung mag-organize ng panibagong fishing tour. Hindi naman expedition, kundi yung regular lang nating yung kapareho nung dati na pag hindi nila hinarasyon, siguro pwede ba yun yun na lang ang pinaka-test niyan, di ba? Kung talagang nagde-de-escalate nga.
Pero Ami, yung monster ship nila ay pumunta uli sa Scarborough. Yung pinakamalaking
malapit.
Coast Guard vessel.
Malapit.
Nandun
Pero
ulit.
international waters yun. Yung dinadaanan naman daw is international waters. Paikot-ikot lang siya ron.
Excuse me, Ami, if I can
Yes,
clarify,
yes.
no? Let's refer to dun sa statement ni Rear Admiral Roy Trinidad.
Mm-mm.
who of course gave the report about the the decreasing number of Chinese ships. Sinabi niya, this is what we observed, pero he said, I would not speculate.
Mm-mm.
Ano ibig sabihin nun? Madaming reasons bakit pa nag-lessen yung number. Probably they're just replenishing while waiting for other ships to arrive.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Probably just a tactical measure to put us in a position where lull, then suddenly magdi-deploy na naman sila ng madami.
You know, Prof, we had Ray Powell here a few weeks ago, and his explanation about the presence of Chinese ships, the swarming of Chinese ships in the West Philippine Seas, he had one explanation, which is, minsan daw binibigyan ng subsidy na gasolina yung mga maritime vessels nito, at para ma-consume yung subsidy nila, they just go out to sea and then sometimes just stay there para until ma-replenish yung subsidy nila ulit ng fuel. So, the way Ray Powell explained it, it doesn't have to have any tactical purpose or objective. Sometimes lang daw nag-uubos ng subsidiya ng gasolina yung mga sasakyan na yan. So it could be any of those reasons.
A lot of things, a lot of factors. So,
Professor, ang tingin mo ba yung ating gobyerno ay open na yung pinagdedebatihan noong nakaraang linggo na sasabihin sa China yung schedule ng resupply? Yung ating gobyerno ba ay yun ang ibig sabihin ng de-escalation?
Hindi. Pinabulaanan na yan ni President Marcos. Sabi niya, we will not inform.
We will not
announce. Well, we are a sovereign country.
Good.
Wouldn't it appear, Ronald, Prof, that yung statement the statement that was coming out of Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin's I think press conference, the points there in his statement, yun talaga yung posisyon ng National Maritime Council, ng gobyerno, ng administration, except that they had to do some damage control because of that word that he uttered outside of the press statement, which caused a lot of alarm and triggered a lot of outrage from the security and defense establishment. And that statement being, misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding.
Yun lang yun. Accident.
Misunderstanding. So, but looking back, remove that one-off statement from the executive secretary. Parang ang lumalabas yung statement niya, yung prepared statement niya, pinaka-policy talaga direction ng administration. That's just my sense.
The executive secretary was very clear during the press conference. Ang position nila is recommendatory. Everything that they said is recommendatory. Even yung sinabi nila na we see it as an accident. So this was a tentative recommendatory position, which of course the president eventually overturned after he went to the West Palm.
Why would the executive secretary go public with a recommendatory position of the Maritime Council? Parang ganun, di ba? It just serves to confuse.
No, I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to de-escalate. I think there's also panic on the part of the executive secretary that this might go out of hand. But of course, at the end, President Marcos exercised his prerogative that the buck stops with him.
Okay.
Pero di ba, Patrick, sabi rin ni Executive Secretary ay hindi siya sanay sa press conference.
Right.
Oo nga. Kasalanan nga yan ng journalist eh. Tanong kasi ng tanong.
Ang kulit eh.
Makulit kasi kaya ganon.
Sinabi naman niya eh.
Kaya kahit hilaw pa yung policy, in-announce niya.
Tapos
Hilaw pa yun eh.
sumagot sa tanong ng reporter.
Patrick?
Oo nga, ayun. Kinukulit ng mga reporter eh.
Baka tiga Philstar.
Oh.
Prof, you're saying.
Siguro.
Prof, go ahead.
Okay, since if I may have the chance to ask a question, Since yan si Ronald, no?
Yan. Sige.
Diretso yung question ko kay Ronald. Ronald, sa study ko, no, a couple of articles ko, of course, looking at the policy of the current administration and, of course, the policy of the late President Benigno Aquino III, ang sinasabi ko, there's a similarity that both presidents challenge China to expand its claim. Will you agree with me?
Yes. May similarity sa foreign policy.
Ganun lang, Ronald.
Ang kaibahan lang, Prof, ay mukhang yung binabanggit mo na ano ba yan? Parang gusto ko sabihin, the senior in the room.
Yun.
Yung senior in the room mukhang mas apparent kaysa nung panahon ni Pinoy.
Yung senior in the room, senior, siguro, was trying to cut a deal. Di ba? Ito, senior in the room, panic. Kasi it might drag a country into a major confrontation with China.
With that, thank you for joining the Storycon, Professor Renato De Castro. Thank you for your time, Professor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you rin.
Professor, layo mong tanong
Hindi makasagot eh. Nahihirapan eh. Baka ano masabi.
Para kasi ES
Baka ano masabi. Kwento mo na lang, Ronald, pagbalik mo.
Hindi rin ako sanay sa press con.
You're watching Storycon on One News. Just need to take a break. Please stay with us.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group. We've got the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to the Story Conference. I'm Patrick Paez.
I'm at Lingao, also with us Ami Pamintuan and Tito Ronald Llamas all the way from the US. On the way home in a few hours, I suppose. So Tito Ronald, hintayin namin ha.
So Ed, inamin ni Professor kung sino yung adult in the room.
Oo nga eh.
Kung sino yung senior in the room.
Oo. Pero Ronald, curious ako, parang loaded every time we talk about the adult in the room. Parang medyo loaded. Parang may alam ka na gusto mo sabihin na ayaw mo sabihin. Yan.
Inamin naman ni Prof, di ba? Kung sino yung adult in the room.
So sino nga?
So sino yung mga prepubescent in the room? Sino yung mga non-adults? Mas interesado ko doon.
Well, ang sinasabi ni Professor, ang adult in the room ay yung mga puti. Di ba? Ay yung kailangan yung vessel nila sa resupply. Which is not the escalation.
Actually, yeah.
So,
if you're going to bring, you're going to bring a few cans of sardines, you bring a battle group.
Critical si Prof dun sa de-escalation.
Pero makikita natin yan for the coming weeks, makikita natin kasi kapag ganyang medyo high profile yung meeting natin na yan. And ang US nag-issue din ng statement ngayon na welcoming the agreement between the Philippines and China to de-escalate nga. Siyempre, problema din nila. Hindi naman basta-basta makasugod dyan yung mga Amerikano, even if we request, kahit nga MDT, hindi yan automatically mati-trigger kung sakaling magkaroon ng armed conflict eh.
Sasabi nga ng
may proseso pa yan eh. So I'm sure they actually genuinely welcome nga na nag-uusap tayo with China.
Right. Sabi nga ng adult in the room, Ami, hindi pa ready yung mga kano.
Yeah, ang dami ng problema.
That was also the situation in 2012 eh. Kaya the Americans were not that hot to support us and push for
Well, they brokered, apparently, allegedly. They were the ones who brokered the pullout.
Because they didn't want to get
They didn't take sides. They didn't take our side back then. Di ba, Ronald?
That's true.
In 2012, they didn't exactly take our side in Scarborough.
Yes.
In the Scarborough
Kaya nga sabi
standoff.
ko kay Prof,
Nagpa-pull out sila.
Kaya nga sabi ko kay Prof kanina, yun yung difference. Ngayon, mas assertive yung adult in the room kesa nung 2012. Very less assertive sila noon. No, hindi pa sila parang nagsisimula pa lang silang pumasok dito sa ating region.
Pero Ronald, kung mas assertive, kung seemingly assertive ngayon yung US, di ba dahil in response nga to greater Chinese aggression?
Yes.
Respond sila eh. Actually, busy ngayon yung US, napakarami nilang problema. They have to deal with a lot, Ukraine, Israel, mag-eleksyon pa sila. Medyo ano yun eh.
Ronald, Ami,
nung panahon ni Pinoy ay merong Asia pivot si Obama. Pero yung kanyang Asia pivot, wala pang laman.
Hindi naman natuloy yun.
Okay.
Kaya nga, wala pang substance. Ngayon, yung Asia pivot nila may laman. At ikalawa, nilinaw nila yung Taiwan issue. Yung strategic ambiguity na foreign policy nila in relation sa Taiwan for more than 4 decades, nilinaw nila under Biden that they are willing to defend Taiwan militarily. So doon natapos, sa panahon ni Biden, natapos yung strategic ambiguity nila. So yun yung kaibahan dahil related yung Taiwan dito sa issue ng South China Sea.
Okay. Bok,
Kaya
kami naman tayo.
mas aggressive sila ngayon.
Kami naman tayo. May guest tayo. Baka maputol yung guest natin.
We have on the line, joining us as a resource, is Malutikia of Publicus. They have a survey.
Pahayag survey.
Okay, Bok?
Miss Malu, magandang hapon. Thank you for joining us.
Ay, magandang hapon sa inyo. Kay Ami, kay Ronald, kay Patrick, at kay Ed.
Hi, ma'am. Ma'am,
Hi, Malu.
I'm going through yung statement niyo dun sa Pahayag second quarter survey. At least this much I get. Stable or steady approval ratings ni BBM, ni Martin Romualdez, at ni Chief Justice Alex Hesmundo. Pero significant, that's the word that you used, significant decline yung kay VP Sara by, I think, 7 percentage points dun sa
7%,
approval and then 5 percentage points doon sa trust ratings. We're trying to understand why the decline when
Siya lang.
the others.
Siya lang.
Well, I think she's also has a dip in ratings eh. Pero notable yung kay VP Sara eh. What's the explanation for that, ma'am?
Well, tingnan niyo yung meron isang para tayo nag-echo.
Ay, may ako ba? Ay, teka.
Hindi, wala.
Wala? Okay. Kung
Okay
titingnan
lang.
nyo, meron diyang isang question, ano ba yung pressing national issue that is affecting the overall performance of the Vice President?
Mhm.
Makikita nyo doon, yung top 3, lahat yun tungkol sa tatay niya. And that's around 56%. So,
Okay.
ano yung number 1 doon is the inclusion of the VP dun sa accused in crimes against the ICC. 24%. Oo, 24% yon. Yung kay Duterte accusing President Marcos of taking cocaine, 16% yon. Yung congressional investigation on the so-called gentleman's agreement, 16%.
Okay,
So,
so
makikita mo yung number 4, 5, 6 is all about her work as DepEd. So, it has nothing to do with DepEd, everything to do with the political climate.
Ms. Tikia, her father's dragging her down?
Yes, the father, whatever the father, you have to understand that Duterte is a shared brand. So technically, whatever one says, it can influence the incumbent. So the former president saying so many things can influence the incumbent, which is the vice president, who is the secretary. So titingnan mo rin doon, during the survey period, she remained quiet on issues. As I guess si Ronald knows this. Nagkomentaryo na rin siya dyan, yung sinabing na no comment. So, these things all add up to that negative 7% in terms of the approval, no? And that is high because that is more than the margin of error, which is plus or minus 3.
Okay, Ms. Malu, her resignation from DepEd and from the cabinet of the president, is this going to change the dynamics in such a way na, whatever her father does won't affect her performance rating?
Well, we did not, the survey period was from 15 to 19 June. So hindi namin na-capture yung pagre-resign. Pero nagtanong kami, kung magre-resign si VP as DepEd Secretary, yung ba ay pabor kayo o hindi? Lumalabas 56% were saying no. Do not resign. But since nag-resign na siya, yung tinanong mo, will it affect? I think parang naalis yung onus, yung burden. Now, however she will probably shape her role in the future will impact on that approval. Now, ang approval na lang niya is as Vice President, not as DepEd.
Ayan ang tanungan ngayon, Miss Tikia, ano? Ayan ang spekulasyon ngayon. Tuloy-tuloy ba yung slide na yan? Ay, ikaw as an analyst, anong tingin mo? You think it will be sustained? Kasi malapit na yung midterm elections. Yan ang tinitingnan ngayon, yung Duterte brand nga. Anong impact niyan sa Duterte brand? And sa yung ratings ng Vice President, tuloy-tuloy ba yung pagbagsak niya? Do you think?
Dagdag sa tanong ni Ami, Miss Tikia. Dagdag lang sa tanong ni Ami. Pagkakasabi mo kasi, may epekto yung tatay, may epekto yung Duterte brand doon sa pagbaba ni Sara. Pero ngayon, nawala na siya sa official family ni President Bongbong Marcos. Ang trend, siya yung mag-lead ng opposition, sabi nga ni ex-human rights lawyer Harry Roque. Di ba magpapatuloy siyang tamaan dahil mapapalapit siya sa kanyang tatay? Siya nga yung magsasama sila dito sa Duterte opposition na sinasabi. Pagkakasabi mo, ito yung nag-drag sa kanya pababa. So, dagdag sa tanong ni Ami, magpapatuloy ba because of the consolidation of the Duterte as an opposition?
Well, again, yung mga tanong nyo very speculative, but I will try to analyze it per the number. One, I think very strategic yung sinabi niya tatlong Duterte na tatakbo. Sinabi niya yung mga dates. Meron sa midterm sa senador at meron 2028. Alam naman yan si Ronald, alam niya why this thing is being done now. Second, will it tutuloy ba ang pagdaus-us niya? Sa tingin ko hindi, kasi hindi pa defined siya ba ay magli-lead ng opposition, katulad ng tinanong ni Ronald, no? Siya ba ang magli-lead ng opposition o magiging fiscalizer lang siya? Makikita nyo doon may parte doon sa survey na minimeasure yung pro-admin at anti-admin. Makikita nyo yung pro-admin nawawalan ng traction, pumupunta sa undecided. Yung undecided nasa 50% more. Yung opposition, ganun din yung behavior. From nung una, opposition sila, ngayon pumupunta na sila sa undecided. Bakit? Dahil hindi klarado kung sino ang opposition. So between now and October, which is the filing, sa tingin ko very fluid yung sitwasyon. Depende kung sino talagang tatakbo dun sa mga Duterte. Depende kung sino talaga yung magiging mukha ng opposition. At depende kung anong desisyon ni Vice President, kung siya pa ay magiging opposition, supporter pa rin ng administrasyon, or fiscalizer.
Ma'am, let me ask you this. Ito labas na ito sa survey ng publikos. Let me ask you this as a political strategist. What do you think would be the best political route for Sara Duterte to be the head of the opposition, or to be a fiscalizer lang?
Sa tingin ko, depende yan kung anong plano niya sa 2028 eh. Kasi kung siya'y desididong tumakbo sa 2028, kailangan klarado yung contrast. So yung pagiging oposisyon ay ang tamang posisyon. Ngayon, kung hindi siya desidido sa 2028, pero gusto niyang ipalabas ang mga posisyon niya sa mga issues, lalo na itong issues na particular sa atin, no? Yung politics of the stomach, presyo ng bilihin,
inflation,
ng utilities. Oo. Kung gusto niyang pumalaot dyan, sa tingin ko magandang direction yun. So, depende talaga kung anong plano niya sa 2028. Kasi sa 2025, mukhang hindi rin siya mag-endorse ng slate eh. Mukhang mamimili siya at ang balita ko halos sa local ang gagawin niyang endorsement.
Pero Mystic niya, sinabi na niya na her brother, si Sebastian, will be running in 2028. Although she clarified the next day nga na hindi pa daw final yung desisyon na yun ng pamilya. Anong impact kaya nun sa ratings ni Vice President? Na yung kapatid pala niyan tatakbo, hindi siya.
Oo, alam mo, Ami, sa tingin ko nagta-trial balloon. Lahat ng mga politiko ngayon nagta-trial balloon. Kung sasama pa sila doon sa napakalaking partido ng incumbent o mananatili sila sa oposisyon. So ako, ang tingin ko doon, trial balloon. Wala naman nating prevents the youngest Duterte from running and seeking the presidency. But you guys know that there's much at stake being mayor and being president of the country.
Malu Tikia, maraming salamat. Thank you for your time, Malu.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Tia.
That was Malu Tikia, CEO of
Founder.
Publicus Asia, which conducted a survey that showed
And political strategist.
that showed VP Sara, his numbers going down. Anyway, thank you for joining the Storycon today. I'm Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, and Ronald Llamas, our resident political pundit.
Join us again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the Storycon. I'm Lingao.
I'm Patrick Paez. We are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.